Everyone's back in 20 seconds. And Cece, I'll give you the thumbs up to go ahead when that happens. All right, all you, Cece.
So today's speaker is going to be Cynthia Seidel. She's a college consultant. She works with high school kids and she helps them with their college plans.
Great, thank you, Cece. All right, I'm Cynthia. I'm going to share my screen right now so you guys can see what we're going to be talking about. Okay, can everybody see that? Thumbs up. Awesome. Hope you guys are having a good week. You're a little bit past the halfway point, so I'm going to guess you're very tired and hopefully not overwhelmed, but I'll bet you have a ton of new information and insights, and I hope it's going great. All right, so as Cece said, what I do is I support students with college planning. So my job is to work usually with high school students throughout the entire process. So figuring out what you might want to do later career-wise, and then translating that into what that might look like in terms of what you study in college, what you major in, where you might go, what else you need during college besides just the classes. So what kind of experiences will set you up to be successful in the area you want career-wise. And then I help students get through that whole fun application process. So what I'm going to be talking about today is these topics. So starting in on what colleges are looking for and what matters, because it's important to know when you're still in high school what actually matters so you can make sure you focus on those things. So in these categories, and then what I plan to do, I've got this long presentation, but I'm not going to read you the slides and I'm not going to cover every detail because I'll give you a copy of my slides later. And instead, I'll kind of go over each of these topics listed here, and then we'll have about 5 minutes for Q&A after each of these, so that if you guys have an immediate question, you can put it in the chat box. And then Gina or Danny will probably be the ones fielding those questions. And we won't go through everything, so you probably will have questions, and you're more than welcome to contact me later. I'll provide my contact info, and just if you have any more questions, I'm happy to answer them. All right, so when colleges are evaluating applicants, the number one thing every college is going to care about is your grades. So, of course, obviously, do well in high school, do your best. The other factor there is rigor. So rigor is if you're taking advanced classes, and that can look like honors classes or AP, IB, running start, or dual enrollment. And any of these more advanced classes are well regarded by the colleges. There's no magical, an AP is better than running start or vice versa. They're all considered rigorous. And so definitely important. Test scores, as most of you probably know, it's now optional at most colleges, whether to take the SAT or the ACT. There are exceptions. If you're coming from another country, and I understand we have quite a few international students here, awesome. You probably will be in a position, if you're applying to US schools, where you will probably either have to take the SAT or ACT, or it'll be strongly recommended. And colleges use that information more when they're not as familiar with the high school students come from, because it helps them gives them the quantitative measure. So you've probably also heard about test blind and test optional. These are all things that came mostly out of the pandemic. Test blind is what a college will call them, their application process, if they will not look at your test scores. So if you do the SAT and get a perfect score, yay, but the colleges will not care if they're test blind. They won't look at your test scores. Most colleges are actually test optional, where you can submit them if your scores are strong. So you would only submit scores to those colleges if they will be favorable for your application. And I'm just going to move at the next slide. I'll show you an example of how to get a feel for what is a good score for a particular college. I've got a link here to college data, and that is a website where you can search exactly what the middle range of scores are of accepted students. And fairtest.org you see down there is the one that lists the current status of each college. They try to track that as closely as possible in real time, so you know which colleges care about test scores and which don't. So here's an example. I just pulled together Seattle U. I believe they've sponsored Washington Business Week in the past. So how to break down this information? This is for ACT. Their average ACT score of enrolled students is a 27 out of a scale of 34. And the middle 50% is 24 to 30. And that's exactly how all colleges will present their scores. And what that means is 24 or 25% of enrolled students had an ACT score below 24. And 25% had an ACT score above 30. So this is the range of students enrolled who had scores, so the 25th to 75th percentile of enrolled students. And then the breakdown you can see. So you can look at your own scores and kind of get a feel for, if I have a 23, I might not want to submit to this score, but fortunately they're test optional, so I don't have to. On the other hand, if you've got a score that's 31, absolutely you're going to want to submit because that will only help your application. Okay, so before we go on to this one, here, let me take off my screen share and I'm going to ask if you guys have any questions. Nobody has a question? Okay, you've all got perfect straight A's and perfect scores and you know where you're going to submit them. You sure you don't have any questions? Okay, we're going to move right along. All right, the next topic is choosing your major. So that's a pretty daunting task, right? Like, what am I going to major in? If I have to choose one thing, how can I possibly make that decision? So here are a few tools that you can use to kind of explore some options. But generally, I start working with students asking, what do you like? Like, think about the subjects and what you've learned in school. What do you actually enjoy the most? Also, what do you do in your free time? When it's entirely your choice what you do, playing video games does not count. But in terms of anything that could suggest what you want to do career-wise, what is it? What do you like? And these are search tools mostly by universities that give you a feel for options out there. So you can answer their questions and it'll suggest a few things that you can do and then just kind of search more about what exactly that would be like in that career. When we're looking at what to major in, that's only one factor. The other part is, where would you go? So during your junior year and into the summer, or hopefully by the end of the summer, but sometimes into your senior year of high school, you'll be developing your college list. So deciding what schools you're going to apply to. And I find this a really helpful resource. This is from Indiana University, and it gives a lot of good questions to ask and things to ask about when you're on a college tour. So I definitely recommend visiting some college campuses. Walk around, ditch your parents if at all possible, so that you can get your own impression, because you will not have your parents with you when you attend college. So ditch them for half an hour, walk around, kind of soak in the atmosphere. Do you want to be there? Does it feel intimidating? Or does it feel friendly? Like, are you just so excited about this campus that you would absolutely love to go there? So you're mostly getting a feel for how you feel about it. And safety profile, very important. I definitely want you guys to search that for all the colleges, just to compare. No campus is crime-free, but there are differences, and it's good to know what you're getting into. So in terms of searching for majors, once you've done these quizzes or you have a feel for what you might be interested in, College Navigator is a tool that you can use to search individual colleges. And then you can go to, there's a tab on there where you can click on, and you'll see when you're exploring in there, you can look for the number of students in each major. So it shows what majors are offered, but it's also much more detail. For example, if you go to a university and you want to major in engineering, there are a lot of universities that offer engineering. Some of them have 2,000 students graduating every year in engineering. Some of them have 2. I would suggest you want to look at the one that has 2,000, because you're going to have a lot more opportunities. The faculty will be teaching at that school because it's a robust program, stuff like that. So College Navigator is a government data site. It's all federal accurate data. So you can get a feel for how many students are in each major and really explore what's out there. College Data is also the one I referenced earlier, has similar but slightly different facts. So you can use both of those resources to get solid, accurate information. So when you're researching colleges, building your college list, I mentioned the 2 government sites on the previous page. College websites are your best friend. So in addition to poking around the website and getting a list of the classes that you would be taking for each major, I strongly recommend registering for a virtual information session. So it's usually a 30-minute thing. Some of them are already pre-recorded. You can just watch on it and fast forward, but learn about what they're all about. What's the culture on campus? What do they care about? And is that a good match for you? Or does it just not quite sound like what you want? It'll give you a lot of good information. Admission reps, their job is to talk to potential students about what they offer and help those students determine if it's a good fit. So they're your best friend when you're comparing colleges. Don't hesitate for a second to reach out and connect with those admissions reps. I'm going to, there's a massive list of resources that you've got in your Blackboard account right now, or you will after the meeting. And I have a ton of links on there. One of them, this is to my website, and I keep a current list of upcoming college fairs. So those of you local in Seattle, you can look at that and see which colleges are coming to town, either individual visits or college fairs, so that you can connect with them in person. Okay, what else? Before we go to our next topic, what else? Don't just think in terms of what you want to study in terms of what classes you're going to take. Think about what each college can offer you. Do you want to study abroad? Hopefully all of you are getting a taste for how important international exposure is and working with people from different cultures, different time zones, different perspectives. Study abroad does that. It really expands your knowledge and experience, and it's life-changing. In some cases, it's amazing. So check if your college that you're looking at has that. Do they offer internships or co-op? Co-op is like an internship, but it's more built into the program. So it's often required. Can you do research? Will it be hands-on work, or will you be sitting at a desk or in a classroom only? Do you want to be in a sorority or fraternity? Do you want to play sports? And not necessarily D1, but do you want to get involved playing casual sports on campus? So think about all of these things that would contribute to your college experience. Okay, this is a good time for more questions. So let me hop out of here so you can see.
We have a few.
Great.
There's one from Venetia. She asked, what is some advice you would give to students who are striving to improve their GPA?
That's a good question. I'm glad, yeah, and it is the most important thing, keeping your GPA as high as possible. So most high schools, most teachers are pretty good at supporting students who really want to thrive in their class. So probably talk to your teacher first. Tutoring, either private tutor or see what the school can provide. But those are things to do when you're already in a class, and studying with friends, looking at your study habits, how you prep for tests and stuff. But also make sure that you're taking the right level of class. So there can be a lot of pressure to take all these advanced classes. Everybody's doing it, it's recommended. Only take the advanced classes if you feel like you're going to be able to do okay in them. Because if you're taking an advanced class and getting a C, that's going to be a really stressful experience, and it won't help. It would have been better to take the regular level class and get an A or a B. So that's something to think about too. I hope that helps.
Okay,
We have
thank
another
you.
one.
Sure.
As someone who doesn't live in the USA, does it matter what school you finish?
Like where you come from? Is that, it doesn't matter what school you come from. So colleges, if you're applying to universities in the US, they look at your application and your high school transcript in the context that you come from. So if you come from an IB school elsewhere, they'll look at your transcript, what you had available to you, what you took, how you did, and evaluate you based on that. And if you came from a different school system, like the UK has a different one, most countries are not the same as the US, which is normal. So they evaluate you based on where you're coming from. So it doesn't matter what high school, it just matters how you did and whether you're ready to study what you're applying to.
Another one before we go to the ones who raised their hands. How important is it to take the SATs or ACTs if you're already taking rigorous exams like in the IB diploma?
Yeah, good question. So if you're applying to US schools, very few of them require the SAT or the ACT. So MIT just announced they're going to be requiring it again. They're one of the only ones. So for most US schools, it's not actually required to take the SAT or the ACT. However, even if you're in the IB diploma program elsewhere, it doesn't necessarily get looked at for admissions purposes. They'll look at the fact that you're taking a rigorous curriculum, but the test scores, as you know, most of the IB exams like AP, you'll be taking in your senior year. So the colleges will not even have those test scores when they're making their decision to admit you. And that's why they rely more heavily on ACT or SAT, because they'll have that information. So it becomes a part of the decision whether you're admitted. So if you're doing the IB diploma, you're probably, it probably would not be a bad idea to take the ACT or the SAT.
Go ahead, Nico.
One more question before we move on.
Do you know any like places we could find like scholarships or anything?
I
Any
do.
websites or anything?
Absolutely. That's coming up. I'm glad you asked.
Okay.
How about one more question and then we'll move to the next section.
Go, Anna.
Yes, I'm interested in importance of activities and extracurricular work.
Mhm.
Or are you going to talk about it, or is it the right time to ask this question?
There's no wrong time. So yes, and I am going to talk about it. So perfect. And then if you have any questions after I talk about it, just pop back in and ask. Sounds good? Okay, let me go back to the presentation. And then hopefully there will be time at the end too if there are still questions. Okay. Oh, there was one more slide on choosing your college. So if I were a high school student going to college, I'd want to know what people my own age thought about these colleges, not what some marketing department at the university is saying about their college. So I strongly recommend going out and finding out what current students think about their school and their program. So these are just a couple of sites, and of course, social media, you can follow various accounts to learn more. One caveat, take it with a grain of salt, because people tend to communicate more when they're complaining about something than when they're happy. So just look for patterns. Like if somebody consistently complains that the food is horrible, if you hear it once, don't worry about it. If you hear it a few times, yeah, you might be worried about the food on that campus. So just kind of take that in stride. All right, now this is a really, really, really important topic. The US has some of the most expensive universities in the world. It also has some very, very affordable options and everything in between. So it's really, really important to establish early on, talk with your parents, figure out what the budget is. Like if your family has a budget of $30,000 a year, which is a huge amount of money, you don't want to start looking at colleges that are going to cost $80,000. And there are many colleges in the US that are seriously $80,000 a year. So there are also many, many more affordable options, and there is financing available. So just kind of a quick rundown here of the range. Community colleges are going to be your least expensive option. So locally, Bellevue College, Renton Technical College, Lake Washington Institute of Technology. These are excellent schools. And students can, in many cases, graduate with a four-year degree from these schools now. They're adding more over time to meet the demand. More common is students will go for their first 2 years at one of these schools. And I know we have students from Michigan and California. Your states have similar programs where you can get what's called an AA, an associate degree in 2 years, and transfer either in-state or to another state's college and complete your degree at a four-year university and save a ton of money. And take your time to figure out what you might want to major in. Lots of good reasons for doing this. Generally, the next level up price-wise is public in-state universities. So in Washington, the University of Washington, Washington State, Western, for example. And these are usually going to be about under $30,000 total cost of attendance. Cost of attendance including tuition, fees, room and board is included in that, books, general supplies. So it's really important, I can't emphasize enough, to establish a budget and know what you're working with. If you don't have $80,000 a year, that is absolutely fine. You will get an amazing education. There are a ton of great options. The other option, WUI, what a funny term. It's Western Undergraduate Exchange, and it is an awesome program. For those of you in Michigan, there is a regional program like this in your area. WUI just covers the Western states. So California, you're included. It doesn't help anybody coming from out of country because you have to be a resident of these states. All the information is at this link, but basically the public universities in these states can choose to offer a significant tuition discount to students coming from the other states in the region. So check that out, and you can search by university, you can search by program, location, get a feel for if what you're looking for might be offered within a WUI program to save a ton of money. And then out of state, check what they, oops, sorry, back I go. Nope, I touched the wrong button. There we go. For out of state, check if they offer any merit scholarships, and that can help bring down the price. Private universities, we have a ton of amazing private universities and colleges in the US. Some offer merit scholarships, some don't. So it's really important to look on their cost of attendance or finances or scholarships page to see what they offer. And then international. So if you can't hear, I talk a little funny, I'm Canadian. My kids have triple citizenship because my husband's German. So when it was time for them to go to universities, we looked internationally. And so my kids all go to school in British Columbia. They chose to, and they're at universities there because as Canadian citizens, we get a really, really significant break on the tuition. It's about 1/10 of what international students might pay at some of these universities. The UK, citizenship is irrelevant. You have to live there to qualify for the local pricing. Europe, many universities are free in Germany. Netherlands, it's a fraction of what you would pay in the US. So there are some really outstanding international options. And I'm talking to a crowd here that appreciates the international element and how important that is and how much that can really set you up for career success. So if you're at all inclined, I absolutely encourage you to take a look at some of the options internationally. All right. If you are in Seattle or Washington, you have an amazing opportunity. So a few years ago, the Seattle city government introduced a program whereby the first 2 years or up to 90 credits, which is usually 2 years of college, are free if you're coming out of certain high schools. So it has to be within the Seattle public school system. And there's a lot more information here at the link. And for those of you who are not in the city of Seattle or attending these schools, it's irrelevant. So I won't go into detail, but I want you to know about that. If you're in Washington state, there are also some excellent programs based on family income. So talk to your parents about what we're looking at here. Ask them to do the calculators to see if they would qualify, and then see what's out there, because there's some fantastic support systems for helping you pay for college. And this is just a little graphic of the steps to kind of get a feel for what your budget is going to be and finding a college list that would be within that budget. So cost of attendance, bottom box here, is everything that's typically quoted in that. And colleges are required to communicate what their cost of attendance is. Definitely include your parents. It's essential that they be a part of the budget discussion sooner rather than later, so you don't waste time looking at colleges that are not going to work out. And then just take a look at all of these steps along the way, and you'll come up with a good list. Here are some more links for financial assistance. So the federal government provides not just loans, but grants depending on income level. The state, we are in a state, Washington, that is very generous for students who may not qualify for federal financial aid due to various reasons, immigration status, lots of things. So definitely explore these at this website and see what could be available to you to take advantage of. It's there to be used. And it's there to encourage students to be able to access a college education. So I absolutely encourage you to find out whatever resources you may qualify for. So the big chunks of money that colleges give out are awarded at the time you apply. And most international applicants are considered as well for merit scholarships. Need-based, not as usual. Some colleges, but very few. It's the merit scholarships that you are automatically considered for when you apply. And these are the scholarships where they're like, wow, you are such an amazingly qualified student, or you play the oboe, or you are a sports, you play a sport in a position that we need. So we're going to offer you $10,000 a year because we really want you, or whatever it may be. So when you apply these scholarships, most of these scholarships are already automatically awarded if you qualify. And then private scholarships, I've got a whole bunch of links here. there's gazillions more, but it's a good starting place. This could take hours to go through. You can key in, search criteria that apply to you and see what scholarships would be a good fit. And they're usually a little bit smaller amounts of money, but they can add up. Okay, so let's take another little pause here and see if there are any questions about the financial part. Gina or Danny, are there any questions?
None from the chat box, no?
Oh, okay.
I kind of have a self-serving question.
Sure.
So the public service loan, like forgive that you work for 10 years after the fact for nonprofits. Is that, in your opinion, is that something that's something you should strive for, or is kind of fluid based on the presidency, or any advice for working
the latter? The latter. I mean, that's constantly in discussion, right? And it's constantly in flux. I don't want anybody to count on that. Honestly, if you can avoid having a lot of loans from the start, you never have to worry about it. So if you can find a way to make your college education affordable without getting yourself into debt, that's amazing. That gives you freedom because you're not forced to repay it back. Then the money you earn when you're working after college can go to you or invest. So on the other hand, that's not realistic for a lot of people. So, but still, they're doing a lot of loan forgiveness, but I wouldn't count on it. That's not something, if you have that opportunity, jump all over it, but you can't count on it. So yeah, really good question.
And I think we have some people
one
doing.
question.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Can you use many scholarships at once?
Oh, that is a good question. Okay, and that depends. So what the colleges refer to that as is stacking scholarships. So if you qualify, for example, the WUI scholarship, where it's the regional area and they offer the WUI scholarship, usually they don't give additional merit scholarships on top of that because that's usually the best deal going. However, if you're a musician, you might get a music scholarship and that would be stackable. Things like that. And it depends, it's a college by college basis. So that's when you absolutely want to reach out to the admissions office and ask those questions. Because those are important.
She was also wondering if you have scholarships from different organizations, not just the college, if you can just use those as well. That's a part of her question, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And those are on the slide where I had those, I think 4 or 5 different links to search to databases. Those are private. Those are private scholarships, not affiliated with any particular college. So if you get one, you just have them send the check to whatever college you end up going to.
And Cynthia and Jana, if I can just jump in real quick and also add to the chat, Gap Funder is a great way for high schoolers to also be able to raise funds as they prepare for college. Any student allows you the free ability to be able to raise your funds now so that when you go to college, you're able to have all those funds built, and then we transfer the funds to your university. So any student who's interested, now's a great time to get on board. You can do it now, starting at 16 years old, and you can work towards that as you start to prepare for college. And then when you go to college, you already have a pocket or a pot of funds that you can use towards that. So keep that in mind as you guys are preparing and thinking about your futures and how you want to prepare for college.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to continue here with the next section. And the next section is all about applications. So I believe we have mostly rising juniors in the group and some rising seniors possibly. So the rising seniors are probably right in the middle of this or starting to be considering being in the middle of this. And if you're a junior, it's good to know what's ahead. So these are the factors that colleges care about. And every college is going to care about your grades. That's always going to be the most important. The rigor, if you're taking AP, IB, dual enrollment, test scores, so you can see a pattern as we go down the list here, less important. Test scores are going to come in usually third if they're considered at all. And by test scores, I don't mean AP or IB, I mean ACT and SAT. Now, those are the standard admission tests, basically. Activities are important to most colleges, not all. So getting leadership experience, and we'll talk more about activities in a minute, but generally the things you do outside the classroom that build your resume, basically. Recommendation letters from teachers and your school counselor are required for some colleges. And if they're required, you can assume they're important to that college. And then essays and short answer questions. They are usually pretty important. If they're asked, they're important. Some colleges don't require them, but a lot will. So let's talk about activities. It's really important to do more than just schoolwork. And you guys are. You're all doing this class this summer and hopefully learning a ton of really important information that'll help you know what you might want to do in college and later. So when you're thinking about other things to do in terms of any time outside of school, the most important is think what you like. What do you enjoy? What do you want to learn more about or explore? So high school is a great time in summers to try different things. And some of them you're absolutely not going to ever want to do again. That is valuable because you'll know, yeah, you don't want to major in XYZ because you really, really don't like it. On the other hand, you try a few things and something's going to click and you'll realize this is what you want to do long-term. You love it. And that's golden. The more you can figure these things out and get impressions in high school, the better. It's also important to volunteer. You know, at this age, it's hard to get internships that are meaningful or that have a lot of responsibility. Volunteering is a great way to get those opportunities because companies, organizations, communities need help with a lot of things, but they don't necessarily have money to pay somebody to do it. So if you're coming in qualified and eager and ready, a lot of organizations will be more than happy to put you to work and you can learn and get exposure and connections on the job. So let's move ahead to what exactly these essays are all about. The personal statement is required by most colleges when you apply. So you can pretty much count on writing at least this one essay. And it's about 650 words, about a page. And it's a way for you to make the application come alive. So the rest of your application is going to be what classes did you take? What are your grades? Basic background information. What do you want to major in? This is your chance to say, yes, but the fact that I took these classes doesn't explain who I am. Here's what I care about. This is what matters to me. And this is why I would be, you know, this is why I want to major in international relations or whatever it might be. And it really, it's your way of introducing yourself, which makes a huge difference. It's not unusual to have a community impact question. The University of Washington does this. And they want to know not just what matters to you, but how you've contributed to your community and who you are. So who are your people? Who do you want to be around? Like, what do you value? And yeah, expressing your appreciation for diversity and understanding other people's opinions, stuff like that. Additional information, all the applications have a place where you can explain things. So especially coming out of COVID, a lot of people didn't necessarily have the academic history in high school that they would have liked. Grades might have gone sideways. Opportunities to do things were much more limited. So the additional information is the place to explain that, not make excuses, but explain what the reasons were for anything that was not typical. And then colleges also very often have specific questions that they'll ask you that are specific to their university. So why do you want to come here? Pretty common. Good question. So they want to know that you've done your research and that you know that you would be a good fit there. Or why do you want this major? Stuff like that. In terms of types of applications, you might have heard these: rolling admission, regular decision, early action, early decision. So rolling decisions and applications are really when you can submit your application at any time, sometimes right into the summer before you would start. And that's kind of a good way to think about that, is the relationship between you and the university is like, we're just friends. I'm applying. Yeah, we'll see if it works out. We're friends, casual. Regular decision, that's usually, we're looking at mid-November for the University of Washington, and it's more typical that it's rolling or regular decisions are in January for most colleges. That's also, we're just friends. You're applying, you put the effort into applying, you want to be considered, but you know, you're not making a commitment to this university quite yet. Early action, that's when you get your application in, usually by November 1st. Not all colleges offer this as an option, but ones that do, you probably want to do that because that signals to the college that you are eager to be considered for admission and you've got your act together, you got your application done and turned in on time. Kind of think about it in terms of, yeah, I'm ready to be in a relationship. This university matters to me. I'm serious. If you apply early decision, it is a binding agreement. So it's like a marriage proposal that you're making to the college. So you'll hear early decision for some of the more selective universities. And if you apply to them, usually by November 1st, early decision, you are committing that if they accept you, you will go there. You're also accepting however much money they want to charge you to go there. So figure out how much it's going to cost ahead of time. Make sure that you're okay with that and your family is okay with that. You can sometimes increase your likelihood of admission applying early decision, but it's important to know that you are bound. It's like marriage. You are in it for good if you go there, if you apply. Okay, so this is the timeline that we'll talk about next. Let me just stop sharing and see if there are any questions about the general components of the application.
We do have one question from Alex. Go ahead.
It's not really about I forget what you said about like what you just talked about but anyways, if you don't want to go to college, do you still have to take like the ASAT and stuff like that?
No, absolutely not. No, that's just for getting into college. So if you have other plans, you don't have to take those.
And then my other question was, if say you got like a really high score on like the ASVAB, would that also work for college?
What is the test?
It's the ASVAB to like join like the military.
Oh, so that's a whole different category. So colleges won't pay attention to that, but of course the military will. So I'm guessing if you're looking at going into the military, yeah, that's a whole different category of what they're looking for.
Okay.
So much of what we're talking about here actually wouldn't apply to that because it's a very different process and they're looking for very different things.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
Okay.
We have one from the chat box. Can we make an early decision to go to multiple colleges?
Nope. Good question. Nope. You can't marry more than one person either. So it's one. You have to pick one.
Go ahead, Joshua.
For the one that's just like marriage and stuff, like you compared it to marriage. So when you do apply for that, do you have to like sign something that like states that like if you do get accepted that you will like go to that?
Yep. And not only are you signing it, your parents have to sign it and your school counselor has to sign it.
Wow. Okay.
Pretty big deal. So it's okay if you know for sure and you've completely done your research and the price is okay and this is your absolute 100% you would go there if admitted. But if you're at all wavery on that, I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay, thank you.
Go, Nico.
What if you do like the early decision but don't get accepted? Then do you just apply like normal to other colleges?
Yep. And in the meantime, you're submitting your regular decision applications to your other colleges too.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so you're not giving up those opportunities. You can only choose one for regular decision and then you're committed. But if you're accepted at that early decision college, you then have to cancel, like notify all your other colleges that you applied to that you're withdrawing your application.
One from the chat box. Do we have to use fancy vocab in college essay?
Did you say do you have to use fancy wording or vocab?
Yeah.
No, please don't. No, you're real. You have to be a real person. So these college admissions reps, they're usually young and in their 20s. I mean, there are exceptions, but they're real people and they want to connect. They want to know who you are. So you're not, it's not about trying to impress. It's about showing who you are. And that's the genuine you is what they're looking for. So if you talk with a huge vocabulary all the time, definitely do that. But if you're like most people, nah, you don't have to do that.
Go ahead, Cecily.
So like, let's say you apply to a couple of colleges and you get accepted into like some of them. I want to know what are your recommendations for like choosing the best one, or does it depend on the person?
Yeah, absolutely. It depends on the person. So usually when you're building your college list, you'll have a few colleges that you're pretty likely to get into. And I do recommend having at least 3 of those because you want to have some options. And then you might have some that you're not as likely to get admitted to just because they don't admit a lot of students or you don't quite meet the usual requirements. And then so you'll have a list hopefully you'll end up with some options by the time you're in spring of senior year. You'd never have to decide in the US until May 1st, unless you apply early decision and then you are committed. But this gives you time to visit the campuses, talk to current students, maybe talk to faculty members, talk to the university, go, walk around and really think it through before you decide which one to commit to, which one's the best fit. So yeah, you're right. It is totally individual, and that's when you have to really do a lot of thinking and figure out what will be the best for you.
We have 2 more hands raised.
Okay.
Go ahead, Arshdeep.
So I actually have a question about the scholarships.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if we don't use any of the websites that you recommended and like we find a different website, is it possible for you to get scammed by like a scholarship website?
Oh, so yeah, unfortunately, yeah. I mean, that's always possible, right? As a guideline, never pay anybody to apply to a scholarship. So there are some scams out there where they'll say, for X dollars a year, you can be a part of our database and we'll send you scholarships that will be good for you. You don't need to do that. There are scholarships out there, that are listed on these other resources that are free. So the ones I gave you, they're not going to charge you anything to get access to the information of the scholarships out there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Varun.
So what happens if, like, let's say you committed to a college, but then for some reason they decommitted you, but like you already told the other colleges that you're committed to a college? What would the process be there?
Yeah, that's not good. You don't want to be in that situation. So it could happen, right? If you're an all A student or B's and A's, and then suddenly you get 3 C's in senior year, they've admitted you based on the previous grade. So my strongest recommendation there is always be proactive. Communicate with the colleges, because they're people, they're real people, and they're not in the business of rescinding offers, but they want to make sure that everybody coming in is ready to do the work, is basically what it comes down to. So it happens more often, I would say, with math, that it can be an issue. So if you're admitted to a STEM program and on the premise that you're finishing pre-calculus in senior year or higher, and you fail that class, it might be an issue for that university because they might have a program that requires you to hit the ground running with Calculus 1 when you get on campus. So what happens in that situation is most colleges are going to work with you and say, oh my gosh, yeah, I see that things went sideways and I'm sure there will be a reason. Let's look at online classes to catch you up in math so that you're ready when you get on campus. They can technically rescind an offer. They don't do it a lot. It's essential to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's what I would recommend. Just keep those communications open sooner rather than later. If it's not looking good, if you're looking at a class and you're kind of worried about it in, say, March, I would reach out and kind of tell them what's going on.
You can't get back your other offers, right?
No, not usually. You could try, but it's not likely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last one from Arena.
Yeah, I have a question about recommendation. When should I start collecting recommendations for the college? Because, for example, now I'm 15 years old, and I'm gonna go to the college in 2025.
Okay.
And will the college accept my recommendation from this year, from 2022?
No, you're way ahead of the game. Probably not. So they typically want to see recommendation letters from teachers or school counselor from your junior year, so grade 11.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So the difference with that is if you are involved, so a lot of colleges take other recommendation letters as well, which is from somebody in an extracurricular activity or a job or a sport, something that you've been involved in outside of academics. And quite often you'll have consistency of a coach or a boss that you've had for a number of years, and then they can be a great recommender. As long as that connection didn't end after 9th grade or so, because you want it to be pretty current.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let me show you guys the timeline, and then we'll still have a couple more minutes, it looks like, at the end. Okay, so in freshman and sophomore year, you have a perfect lead-in question. So these are the things that you'll want to be thinking about doing when you're in 9th and 10th grade. So exploring activities, and I just can't emphasize that enough. It's a time to go and explore, try things, look into things, see what you like and don't like. And then when you find something you like, develop those skills. So if you're interested in business or management, what you're doing right now is amazing. You're developing your skills, exposing yourself to more knowledge and awareness of what's out there. Take a chance, try leadership opportunities, whether it's running for office in a club or casual leadership where you're just initiating things, or being an influencer in your social group or at school. Try things. It's a great time to explore and try, and then visit college campuses. So if you're traveling with your family or even just visit local campuses, we've only got a few kind of here in Seattle, like tucked way up in the northwest corner of the US, but we still have a few to get impressions about what you like and don't like, about various campus sizes, where they're located, things like that. Junior year is when it starts to get busier. So you want to start making a list of your activities so that you can see it on paper and kind of see if you've got the things you want to tell colleges about. So have you explored career possibilities or interests, subject areas? Have you done volunteering? Have you had any leadership? Things like that. And then more exploring, researching majors, researching colleges, becoming comfortable comparing them. So the sooner you can start looking at this, the more comfortable you're going to be knowing what's out there and comparing, so that you've got a really good lens to look at it through and say, yeah, it all sounds good on their website, but I know that college B down the street has all these other things that I know exist and I want that. So that you can become a really well-educated consumer, because you're picking the college. Sure, you apply and you hope they pick you too, but you have to be the initiator to pick the ones that are right for you. And then start narrowing down your colleges. And then here, going back to the last question, was when to ask for recommendation letters. If you're at a big school, especially a big public high school, you probably want to ask in May or June of junior year, and just make sure that you have the commitment that the teachers you want to write your recommendation letters are willing to do it, because teachers get really, really busy. They have a lot of conflicting commitments. And usually we all know there are 1 or 2 or 3 of the most popular teachers that everybody loves in each high school, and they can't possibly each write 100 letters. So they usually have to cut it off at some point. So I recommend asking early. Senior year, well, okay, summer before senior year is when it's a great time to finalize that college list. So you've really nailed down where you want to apply, and then explore what your first choice major would be and what your backup is. A lot of colleges allow you to have a backup if you don't get admitted to your first choice. So have a really good idea of why you've chosen those colleges, because a lot of them will ask that in the application. And if they don't ask, you still need to know what your reason is for putting them on your list. And then give some thought to if you're going to apply early action, or if you have decided that there's one school that you want to apply early decision to. Application. So the Common App is the main application that most universities in the US are on. It opens on August 1st. And then, start filling in that application or any applications for other colleges, and write your essays. During senior year, you have to still do really well at school. So school is always the #1 priority, because applications can be very time consuming, but they're meaningless if your grades slip. Start looking into filing the FAFSA and WASFA financial aid applications when they open on October 1st. I highly recommend building in a time buffer. Don't wait till the last minute, because that is extremely stressful. And then the power goes out or something happens and then you miss that deadline. So I highly recommend getting applications done much earlier than when they're due. Submit your transcripts, test scores as applicable. And then what happens after you submit your application is the colleges usually correspond with you within a few days to a couple of weeks with your applicant number. And then you have an account, which is usually called your student portal or your applicant portal. And you go in there and you check for updates, and you confirm that they've received your transcript, test scores, everything that they need. And you want to monitor that closely. Okay. So that is the end of what I was presenting. Here are some general resources. These are mostly my website, and I try to keep a lot of current information and links on my website that I absolutely encourage you to use, as well as a much more detailed resource list that you guys have now in your Blackboard account. So every link that I've had in the presentation, I've also put in that so you can easily access it. So we've got just a few more minutes. Does anybody have any questions?
We have a few from the chat box. Can you change majors after being accepted, or do you have to go through the whole process again?
Oh, good question. So that depends on the school, the university, and that would be when you'd want to reach out right away to the admissions office and see what their procedure is.
Another one, can we have recommendation letters on hand before they're needed, or are they specifically asking for a certain thing?
Oh, you can't even see the recommendation letters. It gets worse. That's a shock to a lot of people. So the way it works is colleges feel that recommendation letters lose their integrity if students can see them. So you never see them. What happens is you will invite your recommenders within the application and they will upload their application. You can opt to make them visible to you, but then colleges don't give them the same credibility. They don't count for as much or anything. So it's highly recommended that you, well, a couple of things, that you agree within the application to make them confidential. But hand in hand with that, choose your recommenders really carefully. Make sure they're not somebody who's going to give you a bad recommendation.
Another one is, will there be some kind of interview?
Oh, sometimes, yeah, occasionally. So it depends on the university, and sometimes it depends on the major you're applying to. So that should all be detailed on the admissions website, and if not there, in the application itself when you go to apply. And sometimes they use recorded interviews and sometimes a Zoom interview. It really varies.
Go ahead, Anna.
So I have a question about a recommendation letter. Should I have like 2 recommendation letters from school from different teachers, or one is like okay? And also, should I have a recommendation letter from Angel from my country?
So all of those could be good. It depends what the colleges accept. So when the Common App opens, and actually, so here's the other thing, the Common App is always open. So you can start a Common App account. Just go to commonapp.org and start your account. It rolls over on August 1st for the next application year, but it doesn't delete the general information you put in there. It just deletes anything specific to any given college. So you can go in there if you're in 9th grade and start your Common App account. And what that does is it gives you access to every university that's in the Common App, which is about, I think it's about 800, 900, including some international. So a lot more and more international universities are starting to join the Common App system. So specified in the Common App are all the requirements for which recommendation letters they require or which ones they accept. And you're right, it's usually a good bet is to have 2 recommendation letters that you're planning to ask for or that you line up, one with an English or history teacher and one with a STEM teacher. Pretty good guidelines. Some require more, some require less. The other thing, if you can open your Common App account, is you'll look at what essays each college is going to be requiring, so you can get a heads up of the kind of stuff that's going to matter to them.
Thanks a
Real
lot.
quick, oh, sorry, I just wanted to jump in and reiterate. Gina, you brought up a really good resource for college students, and that's using that letter and getting that letter of recommendation. For students, it's typically written by an individual, but to be able to see something written by Washington Business Week really says a lot to your initiative and your drive. So make sure you take advantage of that resource. One other thing that I want to say too is that if you are interested in doing Gap Funder, we are currently giving away a free iPad. So if you're looking for an incentive to really get going and start raising funds towards college, now's a great time to do it. The promotion ends this week, so please make sure you guys get on and take advantage of that opportunity.
Okay. Anna, I think you had a follow-up question.
No, it was just thank you.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
There are a few more questions from the chat box. If you study internationally and you're from the USA, will your degree that you acquire internationally be accredited or valid for jobs in the US?
So most are, and that is something that you can look up their accreditation on the website of the university. Most are, and most actually accept US federal government funding too. So if you fill out the FAFSA form and you get a loan through the US government, it usually is accepted by most, well, certainly most accredited universities abroad. There are exceptions, but there are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of universities and programs, English taught programs as well outside the US. That'll have absolutely transfer back to the US for grad school or be recognized by employers. Where it gets a little bit trickier is when you're getting a credential, such as in the medical field, that you need to be licensed back in the US. It doesn't necessarily transfer. They'll recognize the degree, but you might have to get additional education and accrediting before you can be recognized or accredited in the state or in the US. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. What are the biggest mistakes that students make during the college application process?
Oh, wow. Depends, right? It's all individual. I think the biggest mistake would be getting caught up in the whole rankings thing, because we all hear the news, like most of the time when I start working with a student, either the student or their parents are like, oh yeah, we're going to apply to Brown and Harvard and Yale and Carnegie Mellon. And then we start taking apart, what are they looking for? What would they give you? Like, would you want this? Is this what would be the best fit for you? Do you want to pay this much money every year? And then, so trying to keep an open mind, I would recommend, because just because a school is high in the rankings does not mean it's a good school for you or that it's the right fit in general. It means that a lot of people know about it in basic terms.
One last question. Which exams are the most important to take if you aren't from the US and want to study there?
Okay. Probably my top recommendation would be the ACT or the SAT, because that's what most universities will be looking at, and as well doing really well within your own school, whether it's IB or another. Don't worry about what system of education they're using, because the US will look at that in the context. They'll look at your grades and your classes in the context of the system that you're in. Okay, I love all of the international questions. This is really cool. It's such a nice opportunity to be able to consider more options than just what you might have in your backyard. Okay, if that's it for the questions, and I think we're at time, you guys have been amazing. I love all the questions and the interest level. Feel free to contact me if you have any more questions. My website contains quite a bit of info, and what I'll do is I'll share with Gina my slides and the resources.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cynthia.
Hey,
I have a lot of people asking me if they can ask you questions after the fact. So if you're great,
sure. Yeah, just send me an email.
Thank you. Okay,
email is the
perfect.
easiest.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
All right, students, unmute, and thanks,
Thank you
Cynthia.
so much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Cynthia.
Thank you.
We're gonna put you back into your breakout rooms to finish out a team debrief. Your